Hey, good morning, guys. I got pulled out of class today for a meeting I was unable to get out of, and I really want to make sure that we cover this information on the Gupta Golden Age and introduce Greek geography today. So I'm going to just go through some of these slides on these topics, and I want you to take out this handout from yesterday. The chart that I asked you to write on the back of your handout for the Gupta Golden Age, you should have a column for peace, prosperity, and cultural achievements. So please get that out and make sure you write down any of the important, pertinent information that I go over here. I just want to show you something as I came down here. What I encountered was pretty impressive to me. Made me a very proud dad. So came down, lots of Barbies going on here. You know, that's not Barbie. I don't know who that is. But anyway, lots of Barbies going on. We got a Barbie boat, a Barbie Jeep, and check that out right there. That's what my daughters are playing with their Barbies as they are doing it. Geographica, the complete illustrated atlas of the world. That's pretty awesome. Makes me really proud. And we should all be keeping up with our geographic knowledge. All right, so here we go. Why is the Gupta dynasty considered to be the golden age of Indian civilization? The do now was, does Ashoka deserve the title the Great? Yes, he does. He was tolerant. He was Buddhist. He expanded the empire. And we discussed that yesterday. Okay, so let's get into the Gupta. We looked at this map yesterday, and basically when we compare it to the Mauryan Empire, we notice it is more decentralized, and this is part of the reason why they were able to bring about peace. And so if you don't have this in your peace column, you should. They were decentralized, and they formed alliances with tributary states, basically to prevent any kind of war. They had these kingdoms that they were allied with, and basically as long as they paid tribute in the form of taxes or grain or soldiers or whatever it might be, then there would be peace between these kingdoms, whether they between the Gupta and their neighbors. Okay, we discussed yesterday Chandragupta Gupta the first and his son Chandragupta Gupta the second. He's the greatest ruler, and this is the golden age of India. There he is right there. You can see Chandragupta. Looks like a pretty cool dude right there. One of the other things that helps bring about peace is the revival of Hinduism. Remember the Mauryans under Ashoka, they promoted Buddhism specifically. And the Gupta, they are Hindu. So they're bringing back Hinduism. And this is going to encourage it's going to encourage people to either become Hindus if they aren't, or to remain Hindu, because people want to do, or they generally tend to do what the leaders do. Basically, if the elites are doing something, then everybody else is going to follow. And another way in which they encouraged it is by donating land to the Brahmin priestly class, and this is going to give them more power and authority in India and allow them to spread Buddhism. They're going to build lots of Hindu temples like this right here. This is the coolest thing that anybody in Gupta India had ever seen. And if you look at how intricately carved it is, it's really beautiful, really a testament to their architectural skill. And if you live in this region, you want to be near that thing. You want to go there. You want to check that out. That is so impressive to you. It is going to draw you in to the belief system. All right. Aside from that, the caste system is extremely pervasive in Indian society, so that's another reinforcing factor with the revival of Hinduism. But at the same time, they're bringing back Hinduism. They are remaining tolerant of the other religious minorities, particularly Buddhism. Okay, so as far as prosperity goes, one of the things that they're going to do is encourage trade within India by standardizing money. We saw other empires do this, particularly Shi Huangdi, the Qin dynasty. Create the same currency system for everybody to use. It's going to make it easier for people to trade. So more trade, more prosperity helps bring about the golden age. Another development that's going to help encourage trade, and it's going to make this a golden age, is increased long distance trade, specifically as a result of increased knowledge of the monsoons. And we discussed this back in one of the previous chapters where we were learning about Indian geography, the monsoon winds are basically the seasonal winds that blow north and south, depending upon the season, across the Indian Ocean. As people start to learn about this pattern, they can predictably use those winds to travel along the Indian Ocean. And you notice where India is located, right here, in the center of the Indian Ocean basin. That puts it in the center of East Africa, Southeast Asia, and eventually China. So they have this really important location, which is going to make them a center of long-distance trade. So standardized currency within India is going to help promote trade inside, long-distance trade, the monsoon winds, and their location on the Indian Ocean basin is going to promote prosperity in general. All right. Now, as far as their cultural achievements go, we're looking here at visual arts and architecture. One of the major categories in which they will have achievements is in the construction of these caves. So there are two cave complexes that are developed during this period. The Udayagiri caves, which are Hindu caves, and we can see a Hindu sculpture here. This is the Hindu god Vishnu. And the Ajanta caves, which are Buddhist caves. And I just want to show you a quick little video here about this. Let me put you on pause here for a second. All right, so here's a little bit of information about the Ajanta caves, one of the more impressive architectural and artistic achievements.
Historical transitions in Buddhist art, Ajanta Cave. During the 19th century, about 30 rock cave temples of various sizes were discovered by a British man in the dense forest of the Deccan Plateau in India. This temple cave complex describes the rise and fall of Buddhist art in India. The caves were carved out in two separate phases. The early caves date back to between the 2nd century BC and the 1st century AD. The early caves are simply carved, they're plain. This is a vihara, that's where the monks lived and trained. The monks slept on elevated beds cut into the rock. The Chaitya Griha is the prayer hall. The object of worship here is a stupa, which is held to contain Buddha's remains. The art of sculpting Buddhist statues did not exist at that time. People worshipped the stupa instead. Some of the caves were made hundreds of years later in the 5th and 7th centuries. They were very different in style from the earlier caves. A statue of Buddha was carved in front of this stupa. The object of worship had shifted from the stupa to the sculpted representation of Buddha. This statue of Buddha is 7.3 meters long, including the base. It's one of the largest reclining statues known in India. Donations from wealthy patrons helped in the development of Buddhist art in the rock temples, such as this wall painting which depicts the former life of Buddha. These colourful paintings have remained intact for more than 1,400 years. Among all the paintings at Ajanta, this bodhisattva figure holding a lotus flower is considered to be the finest. Its date of origin is believed to be sometime around the 6th century. The body was depicted with graceful curves. The paintings of the Ajanta caves are the origin of Buddhist art in Asia. It's believed that this was the last cave carved out at the Ajanta site during the 7th century. However, it was never finished. As Hinduism gained ground in India, Buddhism went into decline. The Ajanta caves were abandoned and quite forgotten for a long time, and the forest kept them secret for more than 1,000 years.
Okay, so, all right, so pretty good video, except for the fact that, whoops, where are we? Here we are. Basically, she claims that a British guy discovered them, when it's highly unlikely that the people living in that region didn't know about these caves. Anyway, those are the visual arts and architecture. Here are some other images of those caves and the paintings that are inside. In another field, in literature, all right, there are going to be some important developments in Sanskrit literature during this period. One of the most famous writers of India during this time period, his name is Kalidasa. He becomes known as the Shakespeare of India. The Shakespeare of India. Famous poet and playwright. He writes for the Gupta royal court. He writes a love story called Sakuntala. He writes a book that includes 5 books. It's called Panchantratra. And basically it's a collection of children's stories. Well, many of them become known as children's stories because they have morals. They have lessons about proper behavior and ethical behavior within them. And they become widely read and known in India. As far as math goes, this is really the strong point for the Gupta Golden Age. Some of the important things that they did was they developed a close approximation of the value of pi, okay, 3.14, which is used in determining the circumference of a circle. They made advances in trigonometry. They began the use of negative numbers, and they also began to use decimal points. This is probably their most important contribution. I want to show you a quick little video clip about this. Just get my times correct here. Okay, and so check this out.
Ancient Hindu chants and writings contain calculations of these Brahma cycles, outlining Indian mathematical works back to the 4th century BC. Interestingly, the ancients used words to express numbers. The word arms was used as the number 2, since humans have 2 arms. But words didn't lend themselves for calculations, so around 10 BC, they were replaced by symbols.
Prior to the Indians, the Babylonians had 2 symbols. This symbol signified 1, 60, and 3,600, and this symbol signified 10. Obviously, with only 2 symbols, the applications were limited. To write 6, it took 6 symbols. Even in the Roman system, it took 2 symbols. In the Indian system, however, it took only 1 symbol.
For more convenience and accuracy, the ancient Hindu language, Sanskrit, replaced word numbers with 9 single digits.
It is the Indian system of 9 digits that we use today.
Traders and merchants were looking for an easy way to count and calculate. So commerce became the motor for ancient Indian mathematics and a numeric system that invented this crucial digit.
It's the last symbol of this ingenious system for which we remain forever indebted to the ancient Indian thinkers. 0. For them, the symbol stood for the Sanskrit word shunya, meaning nothing. But once the concept became a symbol, mathematical computation was born. Just like Brahma's dream, from nothing came everything.
The impact of India's long history with the 0 can be felt across our high-tech world. No 0, no binary system, no computers. Without the concept of 0, modern mathematicians and physicists would all be out of a job.
All of this, the computers, the software, would be impossible without the preeminent ancient Indian invention, one that's been called the equal of any single human achievement, right up there with mastering fire or the invention of the wheel. The invention of the concept of 0.
All right, so there you go. The concept of 0, another very important contribution in mathematics. All right, so if you don't have that written down, make sure you do the symbol of 0. As long as we're talking about math, I don't want to overlook the numerals. All right, I just want to emphasize this. Our number system was invented in India. There are other number systems that you know about. And as the video makes the point, these are much more efficient, they are easier, they allow for people to make more advanced calculations. Other technological developments, iron metallurgy. The Gupta had excellent iron metal workers. Particularly their iron workers were able to develop these iron pillars like this one here in the city of Delhi. So this thing is over 1,500 years old. It's a solid piece of iron, about 25 feet tall, and it actually does not have any rust on it. Okay, over 1,500 years later, this thing is so well constructed, it has not rusted. So their iron metallurgy is going to make them world renowned, especially when it comes to the making of swords. And Indian swords are going to be the best in the world for a long time. And the Middle East Muslims are going to borrow that technology, just like they borrowed the numerals, right? We refer to them as Arabic numerals very often, and that's because we borrowed them from Arab Muslims. They also pioneered developments in inoculation and vaccines, some surgical methods, and also they have their own system of traditional herbal medicine called Ayurveda. One of the great scientists of the Gupta age is going to be named Aryabhata, and what he did was he focused on astronomy. Particularly, he calculated the solar year to basically exactly what it is, 365.358605. You know, this whole thing is why we have a leap year. He established that the Earth was round by studying eclipses, and he also established that the Earth rotates on its axis and revolves around the sun, not the other way around. Other civilizations had done that as well, but it takes a really long time for that to catch on in the West and our civilization. Eventually, the Gupta will decline. There are going to be invasions from the Kushan Empire by a group called the White Huns around the 5th century. They're going to disintegrate, and a bunch of small kingdoms will dominate northern India until a new dynasty called the Mughal dynasty comes along. They're actually going to be an Islamic empire. You'll learn about them in 10th grade. All right, so that's the Mughals. That's the Guptas, and that's the Golden Age. And right now, I want to switch gears and take a look at Greece. All right, so here's the aim for this lesson. How did Greek geography affect the development of early Greek civilization? We do this a lot. We start with geography. But before we even start with geography, I want to just show you this quote here. Ancient Greece is considered by many historians to be the birthplace of Western civilization. And hopefully when you take a look at these images here, you start to get an idea for why that might be. Okay, when you look at the architecture of the ancient Greeks, this famous building here called the Parthenon is going to inspire the architectural style of Western civilization. When you think about the governmental buildings of our own civilization, they're modeled on this ancient Greek style of architecture. And part of the reason for that is because of the birth of democracy in ancient Greece. Things like the Olympic Games, which was a Greek tradition we continue today. Our ideas about what an ideal person looks like, what physical beauty looks like, is very much based on the notions of the ancient Greeks. So the birthplace of Western civilization, that really is a reference to European civilization. And the United States being colonized by Europeans, we are the inheritors of that Western civilization. Eastern civilization, that's going to be China, India, and the Middle East, places like Persia, and later on, after the birth of Islam, Islamic civilization as well. All right, so let's get to geography. What I would have you do is I would ask you to take a look at these two maps and basically make predictions about how this geographic location and these geographic features will affect the development of the civilization here. All right, so hopefully you notice we've got a lot of water. Think about how a lot of water is going to affect a civilization here. Here's Greece, by the way. It's in the eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea, right? It's in this, what they call the Mediterranean basin, this low-lying area. You've got Europe up here, Africa to the south, and the Middle East, and that's, Asia is over here. So Greece is kind of right in the middle of all of that, okay? When we take a zoomed-in look, that's what we're noticing here. Notice we got this piece of land that extends here. Water on three sides, got the Aegean Sea, the Mediterranean Sea here and the Ionian Sea. Lots of islands, and this dark brown, well, that represents mountains. Okay, here's another image that kind of lets us know what the land looks like. So even the land itself is covered by mountains. Think about how that compares to the other early civilizations that we've learned about. Hopefully you're thinking, I don't see a river here. I don't see a river anywhere, actually. And that's going to have a big effect on the way that they developed. All right. So when we take a look at the characteristics of Greek geography, there are three major things that we should be focusing on. First of all, 80% of Greece is covered by mountains. All right. And what we know about mountains, you think about the Himalayas, and you think about the Hindu Kush and the Altai and the Kunlun and all these different mountains that we've learned about. They're barriers to communication. They're barriers to travel and trade. And what we have learned is that it often leads, or it sometimes can lead to what we call in China ethnocentrism. In Greece, we're calling this localism because it's very specific to local areas. Over here, this is going to be the location of Athens. This over here is going to be the location of Sparta. They're both Greek. They speak the same language. They have the same culture. They will have some communication with one another, but they are localized in that they have a high degree of pride in their own region, in their own city. All right, so this is going to encourage localism. It's also going to encourage people to look to the seas as a way to move around. Because so much of their land is covered by mountains, they're going to be limited in their ability to grow crops, particularly to grow grains, the cereal crops that made those early river valley civilizations so successful. The Greeks are not going to be able to grow that. So one of the effects is going to be they have to colonize. They're going to move. They're going to spread out to other parts of Greece. And when they do, they're going to bring their culture. They're going to bring their language. They're going to bring their religion. They're going to bring their trading patterns, all of that with them, which will have an effect on the entire region. The other thing is that they're going to grow different kinds of crops. They're not going to grow the cereal grains, but they're going to grow things like olives and grapes. And grapes, while, they're great when they're fresh, they don't last forever. But what they can do is they can turn it into wine. The olives, they can turn into olive oil. And these two products are going to be highly desired throughout the Mediterranean region. And this is going to allow them to trade for the grain from places like Egypt and Mesopotamia. Okay, if we go back to our map here. This map here. All right, Egypt is here. Mesopotamia is going to be right over there. So they're going to be able to trade with these civilizations for those grains, for those products. So this archipelago is a chain of islands, and the fact that there are so many islands, it's going to encourage disunity. They're barriers, just like the mountains. The fact that it's a peninsula surrounded by the Aegean, the Ionian, and the Mediterranean seas, it's located in the center of Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. It's going to create a lot of natural harbors for trade. Okay, so merchants are going to be able to trade with people as a result of all of those natural harbors. What is that? All right, so here's a photograph, kind of gives you an idea of the difficult and forbidding terrain. All right, so the rise of the polis. Because they're so separated, they're going to develop these separate independent city-states, right? Just like in Mesopotamia, the city-states, they grow and expand over the surrounding areas. They have different forms of government. Some of them are monarchies, some of them are oligarchies, which are governments ruled by small, wealthy elites, and some of them are democracies, as Athens will be, as we will see. The two most influential are Athens, right here, and Sparta, right here on the Peloponnesus. Okay, so these are going to be the two power centers of ancient Greece, and they developed as a result of their geography. They lacked communication. They lacked the ability to unify under one central government, and so they developed this decentralized form of government under these city-states. This image shows us what a typical city-state would have looked like. There are two parts. There's the Acropolis. This is the high city, and this is where your temples would be. If this were Athens, this is where the Parthenon would be. Down here is the low city, And in the center is the agora. This is the marketplace. And surrounding that would be the homes of the commoners, and some of the wealthy people would be living in there with larger houses. Because it's Greece, you've got a port. Pretty much most of the big cities are going to have ports. And surrounding that, you have the crops that will be grown for trade and in some cases for the consumption of the local inhabitants. If it's a larger city, they might have a stadium, they might have a theater, and in some cases they would be surrounded by walls. But that would probably be more rare. So there's your typical Greek city-state. That's what it would have looked like. Right? So this gives us a little bit of a head start for when I get back on Friday. I hope you have a great day. See you in school.